Three, two, one, fight's on.
My name's Matthew Buckley. My call sign as a fighter pilot was Whiz. I served in the United States Navy on active duty for 10 years and then flew fighters in the reserves for 6 years.
Being a fighter pilot for the United States Navy was the culmination of a dream. Dogfights at supersonic speed on the edge of consciousness. Life and death situations created stress, trauma, depression, anxiety, and fear. I was searching for an answer and I found it. Shockingly, it was psychedelic medicine.
The military does an incredibly good job of training you for combat and doing some pretty horrible stuff to another human being. And then when they're done with you, they do a pretty shitty job of transitioning you back to being a human.
Matthew Buckley, whose call sign as a fighter pilot was Whiz, served in the United States Navy on active duty for 10 years and flew fighters in the reserves for 6 years. Whiz is the founder of the No Fallen Heroes Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to saving and changing the lives of veterans, first responders, and their families with entheogenic healing. Whiz also serves on the advisory board of the Healing Realty Trust and is a board member of My Crew Doses. Whiz, thank you so much for your service, and it is a pleasure to have you on the channel today. How's everything going?
Thanks for having me, Jake. I appreciate it, man. Everything is great. Blessed and unstoppable. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so am I. Really looking forward to this. So, Whiz, before we get into your story and the work that you are doing with No Fallen Heroes, can you give us, some background information on the problems that veterans, first responders, and their families face in the present day?
Absolutely. Many veterans, whether you served during actual combat or in a support role, suffer some sort of trauma, whether it's trauma from an extended deployment, being away from loved ones, or actual, direct combat, to physical problems as well. As a fighter pilot, we're up there pulling 7, 8, 9 Gs, 9 times the force of gravity. And as a Navy fighter pilot, I'm slamming $65 million fighter aircraft into a pitching deck, which is essentially like, just imagine sitting in your driveway in your car and have a crane lift you up to the second story and then drop you. That's the force of that landing. So veterans, their bodies get pretty beat up, and their minds can get pretty beat up as well. And additionally, in the past couple conflicts, we've come up with I was going to say a new term. I guess we finally found a term for it, but it's always been there: moral injury. There are many veterans who just suffer moral injury. I have a buddy who flew F-14 Tomcats, and through no fault of his own, he was told, "Hey, bad guy house, put a bomb through the window," and he's like, "All right," and it ended up being a house with 3 generations of innocent Iraqis in it. 12 innocent people killed. Wasn't his fault, but he took that on board, and he lived with that horror for a long time. So there's physical injuries, there's mental injuries, and then there's moral injuries as well. And then we can dig into this maybe a little later, but unfortunately, there's also MST, which is military sexual trauma. There are many female and male veterans who suffered MST, and it's almost like, you expect the enemy to shoot at you and try and kill you and hurt you. You don't expect your fellow countrymen to do that. So that's some pretty bad stuff. But there are a lot of veterans who didn't experience any of this stuff, and God bless them. That's great. But my mission objective and my job is to help the people who are suffering from some sort of trauma. And we do, I want to get this out of the way at the beginning, because I did this to myself. As veterans, as military members, we kind of trauma shame, or we trauma grade, right? I'm up at 30,000, 40,000 feet in air conditioning. I'm not down on the ground in the shit. So I kind of looked at myself. I'm like, dude, get over yourself, man. You're a baby. Man up, Buttercup. There's guys and gals down there getting blown up and shot at and stuff like that, your trauma is not worthy. That is absolutely the wrong attitude to have. Trauma is trauma.
Yep.
If something's hurting you, it's hurting you, and you deserve to heal. So that's one of the beginnings of the No Fallen Heroes Foundation. There were some veterans charities that only help Navy SEALs, or some that only help combat veterans. I'm like, behind the wall, I got an award for flying 44 combat sorties over southern Iraq, and I'll be the first one to admit that I'm embarrassed. That those were without a doubt the most boring flying I've ever done in my life. The toughest flying I ever did as a fighter pilot was over the skies of Fallon, Nevada, when I was going through Top Gun. So when I healed with these medicines, I came home and I said, we need a foundation for all veterans. And like we just talked about, there's some female veterans, male too, who serve far away from the front lines, who experience sexual trauma. So kind of a big tent, and kind of a long answer to a short question. So veterans face all sort of potential traumas from their service.
Thank you for that overview, Whiz. And I really like how you brought up, because I have heard you actually in other videos or interviews speaking about how sometimes people can compare their trauma, and I think I really appreciate you bringing that up with this topic specifically. So,
well, it's before I forget, Jake, it's important to also recognize that, God bless all the people out there that had great childhoods and great parents and everything like that, and didn't have any problems. A lot of folks who join the military might come from broken homes, might not have a mom and a dad or a stable home structure. I was born and raised in South Jersey. My family was from South Philadelphia, and we made the Pope look Jewish. We could not have been more Catholic. I was an altar boy, the whole 9 yards, Catholic schools. And when I was a 13, 14-year-old kid, I had 6 kids in our family. My middle sister, Monica, was killed by a drunk driver when she was 19, which just totally destroyed my family. It was a hand grenade in the middle of my family. I technically lost my parents too. They were done. They kind of checked out. So I had that trauma, and then I had unfortunately some sexual trauma as a child as well. So I didn't shed that trauma when I went into the military. If anything, I hid it. And then on active duty and flying for the reserves, I think in 15 years of flying fighters, I lost 16 buddies. Not one combat loss either. Weather, mechanical, stupidity, more weather, more mechanical, more stupidity. It doesn't make those losses any less because they weren't in combat. So there's childhood trauma. A lot of veterans carry stuff onto active duty, and then it compounds when you're in the military. So I wanted to bring that up too, that a lot of veterans not only suffered in the military as a result of their service, but their childhood too.
Thank you for sharing, Wiz. I really appreciate the openness here. And I also appreciate, as I said, you've been very open about the struggles you faced also before the military, before the Navy, and also about the struggles you faced when coming out of the Navy. Yeah. And, you shared about the transformative healing experiences you had with psychedelic medicine. For those who haven't heard about your story, can you please share about what led you to psychedelic medicine, and also what made the experience with psychedelic medicine so life-changing for you? Yeah,
well, but to start with, Jake, let's just say that 5 years ago, Whiz, if I heard me talking like this, I would have kicked my own ass, right? I would have taken my lunch money. There's just no way in hell that I expected to be sitting here talking to you about psychedelics. It was nowhere even close to anywhere on my radar, but that's exactly how the universe and God kind of works. So in early 2000s, I was still flying fighter jets for the reserves and ended up helping run a multi-billion-dollar trading firm in Chicago. And going from the ready room of a fighter squadron, where you trust the men and women in that organization with your life, or they're not in that organization, to a Wall Street firm where I couldn't trust somebody to watch my wallet for 5 minutes. It was really a it was a culture shock, right? I had a mission in the military. I trusted people. There was this a brotherhood, a sisterhood, a lot of camaraderie, and what I thought at the time a good mission, right? Man, when I got to Wall Street, you know, some of these people would push their own mother in front of a bus, you know, for $1. It's just, so I got pretty bummed out with kind of transitioning from the military to the civilian world, let alone to Wall Street.
Yeah.
So started hitting the bottle pretty bad. Started hitting some drugs to just mask the symptoms. I was just getting further and further away from who I was underneath all this stuff, and I was getting further away from my bride and my kids and my God. Along the way, in addition to the 16 bros that I lost in aviation mishaps, I lost 3 buddies to suicide, 3 F-18 buddies. One of them was a groomsman in my wedding, Eric Swenson, Swede. You know, beautiful wife and bride, and he was gone one day. And I was like, holy shit, man, I got to do something about veteran suicide. So in 2020, I started a foundation. It was called the Top Gun Fighter Foundation, little, you know, aviator centric. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. You know, how do you keep a veteran from killing himself? You know, buy him a suit, help him write a resume. I had to do something. And around that time, a buddy of mine said, hey, there's a group of Navy SEAL veterans that go down to Mexico and they do psychedelic assisted therapy. And there's a pretty cool group going in a couple of weeks. Would you want to go? And I said, man, go to Mexico and do some drugs with Navy SEALs. That sounds like a great weekend, man. Sign me up. But I had absolutely no clue what I was in for. I'm glad that I only had a little bit of time, because if I like really done my research, I would have been like, oh my God. But no, so I went down to a place called the Mission Within, just south of San Diego, because you do these medicines in San Diego, you're a felon. You do them a half an hour south of San Diego, it'll save and change your life.
Wow.
So we drove down in the Mission Within to south of San Diego in northern Mexico. And, you know, for your viewers or listeners that have ever seen the movie Lone Survivor or read the book, so I went with Marcus Luttrell, famous Navy SEAL. And also, if anybody's a coffee drinker out there, Black Rifle Coffee, one of the founders of Black Rifle Coffee, Jared Taylor, JT. So me, JT, another Navy SEAL, and an NFL veteran who was suffering from horrific CTE. In the military, we call it TBI, traumatic brain injury. Civilians call it CTE. And this guy, you know, I drove in the car, we kind of convoyed down. So I was in the car with the football player, and man, I was sitting next to death. This guy just looked, big dude, just looked like he was done. So let's remember that. And we went down to the Mission Within, and the first night we sat with ibogaine. So iboga is the most powerful psychedelic on the planet. And it's got 13 alkaloids in it. And in the West, they pull out one of the alkaloids called ibogaine, and they isolate it. Ibogaine is absolutely fantastic for addiction issues and also brain injuries.
Yep.
I'll fast forward it. You know, Marcus showed me his brain scans from the VA, dark, black, gray. 3 months after the medicine, he showed me his brain scans, and it was completely white. So the neuroplasticity went in there and regrew some dead stuff, and even maybe even grew some new ones. Wow. So we did ibogaine the first night, and it was you know, I had to look this word up when I got home. It's I guess I should have known it for the SATs. Ineffable. I, you know, on our conversation today, I will fail miserably at trying to convey what I experienced. It's physically impossible.
Yeah.
It was without a doubt the most spiritual and life-saving and changing experience. My father died of a heart attack at the age of 65. My brother and my sisters and my mom believe he died of a broken heart. He died when my sister died. I bring that up because on the medicine, I got to experience both of them again. Got to see my sister, got to see my father, and they were perfect. They could not have looked more angelic, and I was at peace. And then they started to leave. They like kind of were leaving me, and it was a horror. I was crying out. I'm like, don't leave me again. Stop. And they came back, and they kind of looked at me, and I got the sense that I needed to watch them. And as they left that time, they went into everything. They went into my daughter. They went into me, you, the trees, the sun. They never left. They're right here on this podcast, and I was healed. That was 3-4 decades of trauma gone. I got 30-40 years of healing in a night. I was a drinker, not proud to say that. I couldn't even look at alcohol for up to 8 months after I got home. I couldn't even, if I looked at it, it would make me gag. I'd almost vomit if I looked or smelled alcohol. Now, years later, I can have a glass of wine or two with my steak or some pasta. Old Whiz, a glass or two was 2 or 3 bottles. Now, 99.9% of my drinking is gone. I control it. And it just doesn't even, to be honest with you, even a glass or two of wine just doesn't even, I'll just do it to be social, but it's gone.
Yeah.
85% of heroin addicts who sit with ibogaine once, up to 3 years after that experience, never even look at heroin again. And the next day after the ibogaine treatment, they're not going through horrific withdrawal symptoms.
It's incredible.
So we did ibogaine, and that was a 12 to 14 hour, you're in it, man. It's, I remember like one of the biggest decisions I made in my life was like at the 10-hour point, like trying to roll on my side, man. And it took like an hour to do it. It's a workout. It is not, it ain't fun. That was not recreational. That wasn't, you're not taking ibogaine and going out to a bar, man. You ain't going anywhere for a weekend. Yeah. So the next day, we call it an integration day or a gray day or a discovery day. And man, I'm still getting downloads. I actually just reread my journal from that experience again. It was just absolutely incredible, everything that I experienced. And then the next day, so 2 days later, we sat with 5-MeO DMT. And so they sold this to us, the ibogaine. That's a workout, man. That's, the 5-MeO DMT is the icing on the cake. I'm like, oh, okay. And it's like 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, wow, okay, so 12, 14 hours. Hell, I can do this. Man, I got it backwards.
Wow.
My ibogaine experience was kind of an ass kicking. Man, my 5-MeO DMT experience, I think maybe in my 52 years on the planet at that time, I think I had maybe tried to do 2 flips in my life, maybe into a pool. And I think both times I landed on my back. When I did that 5-MeO DMT, and my director of medicine operations hates when I talk like this, but I have to talk like this. I died. I literally, and now you can say ego death, but man, I exploded instantaneously, like Star Wars going to hyperspace. I went from 0 to infinity. I literally exploded into love, light, and energy. There was still a me, but I was part of everything. And I became what I believe, I became one with God. God was like, boom. And it was absolutely perfect. And it answered a question. I've had this question for decades. Was my sister bored? Like, was she in heaven, like looking at her watch going, where's everybody? Or, hey, this has been a while. I got it answered, because there is no such thing as time. The only time was that moment, that present moment that I was in, and it was forever. It was infinite, and it was the only moment. There wasn't any past. There wasn't any future. I was in that immediate moment, one with God, and it was bliss. But I had like an Apollo 13 re-entry, because everything was perfect. The tinnitus in my ears, the vision in my right eye that's been going, my back pains, everything was gone.
Hmm.
in the presence of, I choose to use the word God, but in the presence of source or creator
Yep.
or truth or the universe, I choose to use the word God. Everything was healed. You were in the presence of perfection. But you can't stay. You know, Matthew, do you get this? Do you got this, son? I'm like, yeah, man. I have nothing to worry about. I have nothing to fear. And it's interesting because, I still fly airplanes. I guess you really don't want to hear your pilot talk like this, but I have zero fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing anymore. Now, I want to be old and cranky and yell at people to get off my lawn, and I want grandkids. But what I'm saying is I don't fear death anymore.
Yeah.
But I had to leave. So I had to leave that perfect one with source. And I had to get back into this thing, this imperfect vessel. And I remember trying to get back into me, so to speak. And there was still some darkness, some shame or regret or trauma or booze or something. And they told me, I don't remember this, but they told me, they're like, dude, you got into the fetal position and you yelled at the top of your lungs.
Hmm.
I think I was just trying to push whatever crap was left out. And they're like, then you took a deep breath and you yelled louder and longer. And then before we even knew it, you flipped. I did a forward flip on this mattress. When I went into the medicine, I was facing the Pacific, looking out the window of this beautiful place. And when I came out of the medicine, I'm facing the wall. But it was incredible. It felt forever, which was now. And I came out of that medicine and I was healed. It answered my questions. And I really got good. I got some bonus points with my wife because later at dinner, the people who were holding space for me said, hey, do you remember one of the first things you said when you came out of the medicine? I'm like, no. They're like, you said, I can't wait to tell Susie I love her forever because I finally know what forever means. And it was great. So long answer to short question. I got home from that retreat and I'm like, this is how we're going to end veteran suicide, period. So I changed the name because Top Gun Fighter Foundation sounded a little too fighter pilotish. And I wanted to help all veterans heal. Not only all veterans, but first responders. A lot of guys and gals get off active duty and they put on a local uniform, state, first responder, local cop or something like that. And then when they take that uniform off, they don't take off the trauma, right? As a matter of fact, a lot of veterans who become first responders, man, it's even worse. I have a buddy who was a 20-year Marine, and he said, Whiz, my trauma from the Marine Corps is a joke compared, he was a paramedic down outside of Miami. He's like, man, to see what people can do to children. He's like, so he had double trauma, right? So, military and then first responders. So at the No Fallen Heroes Foundation, we want to help veterans, first responders, and their families because their families serve too. Unfortunately, 99.9% of my wife's trauma is Whiz induced. And I got home from the medicine and it was a little, for the first 30 days, they call it like the pink cloud phase. The ibogaine has the longest window of opportunity of any psychedelic, like 4 weeks.
Yep.
Excuse me. Like for 4 weeks, your things are, my wife's like, what are you doing in the yard hugging a tree? I'm like, look at this tree, man. It's,
Wow.
It's insane. Look at life. I'm at a stoplight with tears in my eyes because the stoplight's beautiful.
Oh
but
God.
The second month home was a little tough. It's called integration. Integration's work, man. And the second month was tough because I'm like, why isn't everybody happy? Why is that homeless guy on the street? I'm that homeless guy, man. We're all made from the same cosmic stardust. There, but for the grace of God, I'm a Ukrainian or I'm a Gazan or I'm an Israeli. I mean, so the second month was a little tough because I was taking on a lot of like, holy crap. Because after having seen perfection and what this is supposed to be, and then the 60 to 90 day point, I kind of found my cruise altitude. But I bring up my wife because there were some problems at home. I got
Mm.
home and I'm like, I'm healed, man. I was at God's feet crying and begging for forgiveness.
Mm.
And he just simply waved his hand and everything was gone. The alcohol, the drugs, the regret, the shame, the stupidity, it was gone. And I came home like, let's go, let's enjoy life. And she's like, well, yay for you, man.
Yeah.
What about me? So she went down to the mission within like 2 or 3 months later, and she sat with the medicine with some
Wow.
Navy SEAL wives and some other military veteran wives, and she came home, and man, we haven't been a better couple. I haven't been a better father. She hasn't been a better mother or human beings since we've done the medicine. So that was my first medicine experience.
Wow.
And it saved and changed my life.
It's really a beautiful thing to hear you speak about your experience and then later on integrating as well. I know you spoke about the fact that it's hard to put words to describe the experience, but I think you, through listening with your other interviews, you do a really incredible job of it. And
I appreciate it.
But before I go on to the next questions, Wiz, just out of curiosity, I would like to ask you 2 questions here. So with the 5-MeO DMT experience, was it a single dose or did they do like what's called like the handshake dose, work their way up? And the second question is, who was around you when you were working with the medicine, both with Ibogaine and 5-MeO?
Great questions. First one first. They do a handshake dose just to familiarize your body with what this thing is. So a handshake dose is exactly that, just a little. And it was in the first time I did 5-MeO DMT was kind of just in a normal looking vape pen.
Okay.
And then the second time I did it a year later, it was actually in like a glass vial and with a lighter type of thing. So I've done kind of both. But the handshake dose is critical. First of all, let me get this out of the way. These medicines are absolutely not for everyone.
Yeah.
I tell people that there are so many different healing modalities: hot yoga, breath work, meditation, walking on the beach, climbing a mountain in Nepal. There are so many different ways to heal. Radical trauma might need radical healing. So let me be perfectly clear.
Yeah.
And again, old me, if I heard me talking like this, I'd give me a wedgie. But after doing the medicine, I believe it. The medicine calls to you. If everything I'm talking to you just is going in one ear and out the other, it's not calling to you. If you're sitting there going, it's calling to you. So listen to it. But the handshake dose is kind of gets your body acclimated to it. And then they gave a pretty good brief, like, all right, you're going to exhale for 10 seconds and then we'll light it. And then you inhale for 10 seconds, hold it as long as you can, and then count down from 10 seconds. And I had my eye shades up on my forehead. And man, when I started counting down after I was holding it in and counting down 10, 9, they just kind of put the eye shades down and, laid me back. Man, when they laid me back, there was no bed. I just kept going, and that's when I kind of exploded. So my guide, Cynthia, who had, because I treat at our foundation and everybody I know, veteran-wise, we treat this like a combat mission, man. There are briefs. You do all your research, you contingency plan, you got your instructor. This ain't, hey, let's go to Mexico and try this. This is, you come into the medicine with intentions. Cynthia helped me. I had 5 intentions for the medicine, 1 through 5. And then I also had 5 questions for the medicine. What do you want to know? What's been burning you for 52 years? So a lot of prep work. And I bring that up because Cynthia was there holding space for the 5-MeO DMT.
Yep.
Another Navy SEAL who came down to hold space the whole weekend was at the head of the bed. And then Dr. Martin Polanco, he's the medical director for the Mission Within. That's the other thing. The Mission Within and a lot of these places, you're doing blood work before, you got to do an EKG. When you're on the ibogaine, because ibogaine can lower your heart rate.
Yeah.
There's people Google ibogaine, they're like, oh my God, in the past 30 years, 9 people have died on ibogaine. The ibogaine didn't kill them, folks. They had underlying cardiac issues, or some of these people showed up on heroin to do the medicine like 20 years ago. So all of these clinics, when you show up, they do a drug and an alcohol test.
Yeah.
And then when you're on the ibogaine, you're hooked up to an EKG. There's 2 nurses that sit there the whole night that hold space. And then there's a cardiologist who comes, a great guy. He just sleeps downstairs during the night. He's there just in case. And then in the room next to you, it's almost a hospital room. It's got a crash cart. It's got all sorts of stuff. So it's very, it's half beautiful and spiritual, and it's half clinical too. So that was the 5-MeO DMT. So they were holding space. And then what was the other question?
No, you actually answered both. The second question was, who was around you when you were doing the medicine, and definitely got to that. I appreciate it. So once again, thank you so much for sharing. It's really great to hear about all of this. And now I'm looking forward to asking about, so how does No Fallen Heroes, your organization, go about providing veterans, first responders, and their family members access to entheogenic healing? What's the process look like?
So if you're a veteran, first responder, or family member, just go to nofallenheroes.com. And in the top right where it says contact us, there's just a little drop down underneath. It says grant request. So if you're in need, we'll try and give you a healing grant. If you can self-pay, that's even better, because that means, we can use funds for somebody else. So we have an intake form that we kind of, for lack of a better word, triage, folks. Some people are doing pretty bad right now, maybe to the front of the line. But I got to be honest with you, Jake, I haven't read a grant request that hasn't made me tear up, or I haven't read a grant request that isn't, this person needs help yesterday. And let me be clear about that. I'm sometimes when I reflect, I shouldn't be doing this. What do I mean? Uncle Sam should be doing this, man. We should not need nonprofits. The military does a great job turning us into a human that can do some pretty shitty things to another human. And then when they chew you up, they spit you out, and they're done with you, man, on to the next group of young kids. We need to do a much better job taking care of our folks and the family members. I got a lady on Instagram reached out. She lost her husband, 34-year-old Marine captain in Iraq, killed in an IED. She's like, for 20 years, I haven't been able to find any hope or help. And I stumbled across one of your videos. Can you help? I'm like, my God, yeah, I can help. But I'm like, where are you, Uncle Sam? So it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. For the past couple of years, we've been going to Costa Rica, a place called Awaken Your Soul in Costa Rica, where we do Iboga, the actual root. So I got to sit with Iboga. Man, it's, Ibogaine was a capsule and, glass of water and good luck. The Iboga ceremony is you're eating, it's like sawdust. It's like eating dirt. You're eating root bark, man.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting experience. So we've been going to Costa Rica and the mission within, but I got to tell you, Jake, every time I'd get on an airplane, I'd be pissed. I'm like, I can't believe I'm being forced to leave this country to heal veterans who got injured serving this country.
Oh my God.
And we're going to another country. But I'm pleased to report we did our first healing retreat in the United States of America in October.
Oh, wow.
In the great state of Colorado.
I see.
So thank you, Oregon. Thank you, Colorado. They are leading the way, at least legalizing these medicines at the state level. They're still illegal at a federal level. We're still kind of breaking the law, which also infuriates me, right? The definition of a Schedule I drug in this country is no therapeutic use and a high risk of addiction. That's a cigarette, man, and that's alcohol.
Yeah.
100% legal. These medicines are anti-addictive. I just told you it destroyed alcohol. It cures heroin addicts, so it's anti-addictive. And these medicines, at least for me and everybody I've helped, knock on wood, it's been the most therapeutic thing they've ever done. So again, typical US government, we're going to label something the exact opposite of what it is. These are Schedule 1 drugs. And if you look at the harm to others and harm to you scale, on the left side of the chart is tobacco, alcohol, heroin, cocaine. Over here is psilocybin.
Yep.
It doesn't even register on the chart almost. You ain't hurting anybody else and it ain't hurting you type of thing. It's a felony, Whiz. So thankfully, Oregon and Colorado are at least leading. I can't believe it failed the other day in California. I can't believe for being such a progressive state, California failed. And I'm not too happy, to be honest with you, here in the state of Florida with DeSantis. DeSantis is a fellow Navy veteran. Bro needs to step up and start leading. We have a massive veteran population in the state of Florida, and the dude needs to lead. So that's what we do. They fill out a grant request form. We kind of triage them, and then we don't pick the medicine, man. It's a medicine buffet, so to speak. Iboga, ibogaine. The way I'll explain it is Iboga and ibogaine, the most powerful psychedelic on the planet, right? MDMA, psilocybin, ayahuasca, mescaline, mom and dad love you. Iboga, ibogaine, or granddad, grandma. They might love you, but they can also beat the shit out of you if needed.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, our director of medicine operations, she does a great job working with our folks for them to kind of select what they want to do. We provide resources and say, hey, here's
okay.
What, you can look at. Because I sat with psilocybin, completely different experience than Iboga and ibogaine. 5-MeO DMT, like I said, flipping the bed. So each one of these medicines is completely different. And each, if you were to do that medicine again, it's going to be a completely different experience. Like when I decided a year later, after I did my initial ibogaine journey, a year later, after starting a foundation, trying to help people, I was feeling a little, let's rust build up, so to speak. Or as an aviator, my wings were icing up. So I went and sat with ibogaine again to kind of knock some of the rust off. A year of crap build up, and it was pretty challenging. And it was funny because my guide, it was Cynthia both times. After I kind of explained that one, it was. I'm as thankful, if not more thankful, than my first one, which was I thought saved and changed my life. And here's why: because it was challenging in some aspects. And my guide told me, Cynthia, she's like, "Oh man, I probably should have briefed you on this." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Anybody who I've coached or worked with in decades of doing this medicine work, anybody who comes back with the intention to try and help others, the medicine's going to show you everything so you can talk about everything." She's like, "Could you imagine if you just had your one ibogaine experience, you're with God, your sister, your dad, and everything, sunshine and lollipops, and then somebody doesn't have that experience? How could you relate to that?" I'm like, "Oh my God, that's a great point." So the second one, I'd call the first one like I got my wings as a fighter pilot. The second ibogaine experience, I went to Top Gun, man. God, the medicine checked me out. It was a check flight for me. But I don't want to make it sound like I'm some chambro or something weird. As a matter of fact, let me share this with you.
Yeah.
The more medicine work that I do, the less I know. If you talk to anybody in this space, like, "Oh, I know everything," or this or that, run as fast as you can.
Yeah.
The more medicine work I do, the less I'm like, "Oh my God, I know absolutely nothing." I can tell you about experiences, but man, run away from people who have chambro vibes or, medicine woman freak vibes, and it's really interesting too, because the more medicine work I do, the less medicine I actually have to do. At the end of the day, Jake, you are the medicine. So any medicine retreats I go on, if I choose to hold space, I take a little just to tune in. to everybody. But even times when I go to kind of knock some annual rust off, I just don't even need that much, man, because your body is like, dude, you just need a little bit to tune into the freak and then get airborne.
Yeah.
I'll never forget my ibogaine the first time. They said you're going to hear bees buzzing. That'll be the onset. And I'm like, that sounds dumb. So I'm lying there, took it, and 30 minutes later, I'm like, great, I'm going to be the one guy this doesn't work for, right?
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, I'm vibrating, man, like infinitely vibrating. And I had to put my eye shades up. I'm like, am I shaking? And I looked at my hands and they were perfect. They were steady as a rock. Eye shades back down. I'm like, why am I? Oh, okay, bees. I get it, buzzing. Jake, I'm way older than you, but in the old days, on old TVs or radios, you had to kind of turn the knob and it was staticky.
Yeah.
I had to tune my body, my soul, everything was tuning in once. And when that buzzing stopped, I got airborne. It was incredible. I was like, oh my God, that was energy. I was vibrating and I had to get to the right speed, frequency, whatever it was. Once I got there, we went. It was so so cool. Yeah. But yeah, another long answer, short question. That's kind of our
fine.
grant process. And so it's either, Costa Rica, Mexico, or Oregon and Colorado. So we go to a ranch in Colorado. One of the guys on the board of our foundation, his name's Daniel Carcillo. He's a two-time Stanley Cup champ who was just suffering from horrific. He was a goon, right? He was he was in a bad place, suicidal, 6 concussions. He was on his way out. Healed with the medicine. And he's on our board. We're best friends. I bring that up because he took the medicine to some of his NHL buddies who were in a bad place. And one of the guys' name is Kyle Quincy. He played for a whole host of teams. I think he ended his career at the Avalanche. So Kyle bought a ranch in Crawford, Colorado, a big, beautiful ranch, which is where we do our medicine work with the foundation. So athletes are using these medicines as well to heal. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is pretty far out of the closet about his ayahuasca use, and
That's right.
I know a lot of professional athletes who are not only healing with the medicine, but there are folks that are just doing the medicine to be better humans. And oh, by the way, that kind of makes them better at other things. I love Aaron Rodgers, who said, he's like, dude, I didn't do ayahuasca to be a better football player. I did it to be a better guy. But guess what happened? I started getting really better at football. I teach people how to trade, and I didn't do the medicine to be a better trader. Obviously, I did it to heal all this crap. And I got home, Jake, and I'll tell you, I was like Neo in the Matrix. Things got better. Just about everything in my life got better. Now, to be blindingly clear, I still got shitty days, man. This ain't all sunshine, lollipops, and unicorns. But here's the difference. Old me, if I'm having a shitty day or I'm in a low, I can kind of step outside of that and look at me and say, dude, that's temporary, man. That ain't you. You're going to get through it. You're absolutely perfect on the inside, Whiz. Just a shit sandwich right now. Old me, if I was in that, I'd be in it, man. And it would spiral. Drugs, alcohol, stupid decisions. So don't get me wrong. This ain't some sort of magic pill where you're happy the rest of your life. If anything, it knocks the rust off and clears that fog so you can see things. And like I said, during my difficult month, there is a lot of, when you see things for what they truly are, it can be kind of sad, right? I mean, when I teach people how to trade, I obviously have to keep up on the news and what's going on. I just look around the world and I'm like, holy shit, man, stop killing each other. Old me, 5 years ago, I would have swam across the Atlantic to kill as many Russians and Hamas guys as possible. Now I'm like, stop. Just fucking stop for a week, man. Stop killing each other. So this kind of new version of Whiz sees souls. I don't see these shells. I don't see a Russian, a Ukrainian, a Hamas, Israeli. I see a fucking white, perfect soul that is infinite. We are all the same cosmic stardust. Why are you killing each other, man? I remember that was on my second ibogaine journey when I was with God again. I remember he gave me a tour of everything, like everything on the planet and the universe. I came home and I told my wife, I'm like, I don't have to travel ever again in my life. She's like, why? I'm like, I saw everything. But when I came back and I'm kind of hanging out with God and looking at this beautiful space station, man, our Earth, and not that God can be sad, but he kind of looked at me like, what are you guys doing, man? What are you doing? You guys should be loving and fun and happy, and look at you, man. Look at you. Wars, pollution, hate, crime, racism. My God, man. Whiz, clean it up, my son. And that's another reason, to be honest, Jake, I think these medicines are still Schedule 1. They have the ability to turn warriors into peacemakers. That doesn't go over too well with the defense, the military industrial complex, does it?
Yep.
I mean, look at how, the first go around went in the late 60s and 70s. We want you to go to another country on the other side of the planet and kill a yellow man you've never met before. And young men were like, I love that guy. Wait, what do you mean? Why do you love that guy? I don't know. I took these mushrooms or some LSD. Okay, well, those are now illegal and they're anti-American, and here's your rifle, go kill people. So, Richard Nixon, hopefully where he is right now, he's like, I can't believe I did that. But the war on drugs is an absolute joke. Imagine the hubris of man outlawing a plant that God put on this planet for us to heal. It doesn't get any more dumb than that. But I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I want to give the Biden administration a little bit of props with, maybe rescheduling marijuana to Schedule 3 here, and then hopefully, hand to God, in 2-3 months in early August, MDMA is rescheduled for therapeutic use.
Fingers crossed.
You got it, man. I mean, 22 to 44 veterans checking out every day. I'll just throw a number out there. We could probably save half of those folks on a daily basis if they went through MDMA therapy. Jake, if I don't make it on a retreat, 100% of the time, my phone lights up on Discovery Day and I'll get a text that says, Whiz, I don't want to kill myself anymore. Or thank you for saving my life. Or
wow.
It's just insane. So, I can't stand it because 22 to 44, pick a number, it's a mass shooting, dude. God forbid, if 22 to 44 children were getting murdered every day in schools, even the anti-gun nuts or the pro-gun nuts would be like, holy shit, we got to do something. But since it's the veteran community, we just kind of, we kind of shrug. Come on now. So we got a mass shooting every day. And the FDA has the ability to start making some things right. Hopefully with MDMA in August, then we can start looking at psilocybin. Then we can maybe start looking at iboga and ibogaine and some of the other healing medicines. But we gotta break the seal with MDMA this summer, hopefully.
Yep, definitely. And I mean, it's just so great to have you on. And on this channel we have a lot of, which I love covering that side too, I guess, like really like research, biotech focused, and to have you come on and really explain like the spiritual experience and like really getting into that, it's awesome to hear. And it's also great.
We're trying. So we're trying, there's a bridge, and I don't know if this bridge is supposed to be completed. On one side, you got guys like me or gals that we've helped, and they will tell you to a man and woman, these medicines help save and change their life. On the other end of this bridge, you got the booger eaters, man. You got people in lab coats and beakers and, Bunsen burners trying to figure out the how behind it. They're like, hey, Whiz, that's great. We need to know the how.
Yep.
But I got to be honest with you, man. I personally believe right in the middle of that bridge is God. There ain't because I've talked to PhDs. I talked to I talked to so many brilliant people in the space.
Yeah.
And still at the bottom of the whiteboard, they get to a shrug especially with ibogaine or iboga. They're just kind of like, like they almost get exasperated. They get frustrated. And I'm like, dude, I ain't frustrated. Just enjoy it. I think, when was it? In the 20s, or penicillin was discovered like in the 20s or 30s. How's it work? We don't know, but it's saving soldiers' lives in the Pacific or in Germany. It wasn't until, 30 years later in the 60s that people with lab coats and beakers actually said, oh, this is how penicillin works. They had been using it for 30 or 40 years, and then they finally discovered how it works. So, I get that, the FDA needs to, we need to investigate stuff, and it needs to be, all sorts of stuff. But, you got shamans or medicine women in the middle of the Amazon kind of laughing like, what the hell's a beaker or a lab coat? We've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah. And
we're kind of fine. And we're not at war and fighting all sorts of people. We don't have an opioid crisis or using fentanyl or shit like that. Maybe fly me to one of your trials. But I get it. It needs to be safe and stuff like that. But, the thing that scares me the most about this space, and I'm kind of torn, right? Because I teach people how to trade and make money. Big pharma. So big pharma speaks with forked tongue, right? They, on one hand, they're like, oh, they're, kind of bad mouthing this stuff a little bit. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, they are freaking the hell out. Marcus told me, he's like, Whiz, I was on 15 meds, 5 to wake up, 5 for lunch, and 5 to go to bed. He hasn't taken a medication in 3 years.
Wow.
So the VA has a revolving door to pharma. It's a pill factory. So big pharma, like I told you about the heroin addicts with ibogaine, they're completely healed. Big pharma don't want to cure you. They want you hooked on their shit. And their shareholders. They have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders. So I'm a little torn, because obviously I want as many people to be able to heal as possible, but I don't want no Moderna or Pfizer coming in and taking ibogaine and changing a molecule and calling it ibogaine and charging 20 grand, for it or something like that. So I'm happy for the future and what's coming, but man, I'm a little leery about big pharma, especially here in the West, because we wanted McDonald's, we wanted Starbucks. I got an hour to heal between Carline and yoga. So what do you have for me that works in an hour? Well, we have the psilocybin synthetic that we changed, and it'll only, there's a couple of companies that are working on taking the psychedelic out of psychedelics. And I think there's, maybe can we get the same benefit of ibogaine without the 12 to 14 hour ass kicking on your back? I don't know, but I'm hopeful for the future, but the cynic in me, whenever it comes to money, and whenever it comes to, wait a minute, this guy is not taking any more of my medications ever again. What did he do, and how do we corner the market on that? That's so. Like I said, I teach people how to trade. If you want some stock tips, shoot me an email, because I'll tell you what's publicly traded psychedelic companies to buy. But the other half of me is like, dude, that sucks. That sucks. Let's be clear. God is an awesome pharmacologist. You can't patent a root. You can't trademark a fungus or a toad, right? So you can go foraging for mushrooms on your own. Hell, you can grow mushrooms in your home or in your yard. So healing will always be free. So always keep that in mind, because I'm already starting to see people freak out a little bit, like, big pharma, and it's going to be so expensive. I'm like, God put this shit in the yard, man. Go find it. Iboga comes from Gabon, Africa. It's kind of hard to, get over to Gabon, but let's keep an eye on big pharma and try and keep them in check as much as we can. I don't know if we can do it, but just know, anybody who's listening, if you want to heal, man, healing's free, period.
So yeah, I mean, there's no doubt there's definitely concerns. I hope that, I think it's inevitable that if MDMA assisted therapy, let's say, isn't approved this year, I think it's inevitable this stuff will get approved. I hope it's done in a responsible way, 100%. Yeah. And,
correct.
I guess to to leave off here, with a question or two. Can you share about you did a wonderful job of explaining about the experiences you've had with people who have gone through the No Fallen Heroes Foundation. Is there a story that sticks out to you the most with a veteran, first responder, family member?
Couple of them. The first one is in our first healing retreat in the United States out in Colorado, we had one of the first guys in the door at the Columbine massacre.
Wow.
This guy was a first responder who was in the library. And when this guy pulled up to the retreat center Thursday, he looked like he was one of the first guys at Columbine. And man, when I hugged him with tears in my eyes Monday morning, he was a different human being. His name's Chris Macklin. You can look him up, watch his podcast.
I did watch that one, by the way. It was great. It was great.
Chicken, call sign Chicken. So he's putting the ladder down. He's like, Whiz, I'm going up to the ranch on weekends. Whenever they're doing retreats, I'm their kind of paramedic guy. I provide the medical. So I have a saying, you put the ladder down. I call this medicine work the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world, because you get in, you heal, and you get home and you're like, holy shit, I gotta put the ladder down and help others. So Chicken was great. And it's funny because when he debriefed it, he's like, Whiz, I drove up from Denver to Crawford, Colorado. He's like, I think I drove past the entrance to the road to the ranch 5 times. He's like, I went into Columbine. I've run into house fires. I've run into shootings with SWAT teams. My hands were shaking. I was crying. He's like, I was terrified of doing this. He's like, I went to like the next ranch and sat in their driveway and was like, oh my God. But I came back and turned left and here I am, man. So
Wow.
that one that makes me smile. And then our chief medical officer, Dr. Kristen Barnes, call sign Rosie. Talk about an underachiever. This lady flew Tomcats for the United States Navy, Tomcats from the movie Top Gun. She did 7 deployments, like a 23-year career.
Wow.
And as an underachiever, she got out and became a doctor. So last February, she and another badass F-15E, a Strike Eagle lady, were the first 2 women, veterans, to go heal with the medicine. So Dr. Barnes went down to Costa Rica and did Iboga. And she said at one point, Whiz, she's like, I'm on my back and I'm looking up and there's all these people around me. And they're all looking down on me. And then she realized I'm on an operating room table. This is like a surgery or something. And then she realized that all the people surrounding this kind of surgical table were her ancestors. And
Wow.
she was like, Whiz, they were reaching in and taking out the bad from me. All the trauma and all sorts of badness that was in me, they were performing surgery on me, on my soul, on my body and everything. And she's like, that was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. So,
Wow.
But I got to be honest with you, Jake, we don't have enough time because every one of these people will give you something like that. I mean, I love going on these retreats and on the discovery day if people want to share, because, you're kind of in a trust circle. Man, I have heard some pretty incredible things. A young African-American girl, Air Force officer who had a lisp when she was a kid and was just teased incessantly about that. She got to go back as a child and healed all of that trauma. Like God kind of put his hand on her mouth and just everybody around her loved and begged for forgiveness.
Wow.
For making fun of her. Oh, it's just, I tear up when I tell some of this stuff. But, knock on wood, Jake, we haven't had one person come back from a retreat and go, oh, that was a waste of time, or I didn't get anything out of that. Every one of the people that we have helped has been transformed in some way. And knock on wood, there hasn't been one negative incident, any medical issues, any nobody freaking out or whatever your worst case scenario is. We've seen none of that. And some of my other sister foundations that have been doing this a little bit longer than me, same thing. Knock on wood, nothing bad. It's all been good. It's challenging, like we talked about earlier. This ain't fun, but it's work. And on the other side of that work is some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, Whiz, thank you so much for coming on. I know I've said it a billion times, it's really been a pleasure hearing you speak today and share about your experiences, others' experiences, and the work you're doing at No Fallen Heroes Foundation. How can people donate to the No Fallen Heroes Foundation? I will put in any links, anything relevant in the description. Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, just go to nofallenheroes.com. And there's a big donate button up there. You can make sure you follow us on Instagram, No Fallen Heroes. And then my Instagram's official_Whiz Buckley, WHIZ Buckley. And if anybody out there has ever had a lifelong dream of flying in a fighter jet, we have a couple L-39 Albatross fighter attack aircraft that we keep down here in Fort Lauderdale. And if you donate a nice, to sponsor a couple veterans to go to treatment, I'll take you up in our fighter jet, and we can do up to about 500 miles an hour. We can do up to 8 Gs. We'll do full aerobatics. We can fly down the beach at, a foot above the ocean. And it's an experience of a lifetime. So on the nofallenheroes.com site, it says jet flight at the top. So if you're interested in that, I'll take you flying in our fighter jet.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Whiz. Listen, everyone, if you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, share, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Whiz.
Thanks, brother.